Most men will never hear this. And even fewer will understand it. You've been told it's about looking younger. About money. About charm. It's not. Some older men walk into a room and without trying. They're noticed. They're respected. They're chosen. Others try harder and stay invisible. Why? It's not their face. Not their car. Not their clothes. It's something deeper. And once you see it, you'll never look at yourself the same way again. 1. Presence. Presence is power without announcement. You notice you lack it the moment you walk into a room and wonder, are they looking at me? When you feel the urge to speak just to fill the silence. When you adjust your tone to sound more impressive. When you laugh a little too quickly. That signal tells you something important. You've placed your center outside yourself. Psychology calls this social evaluation dependency. The human brain scans for approval because, once upon a time, belonging meant survival. But you are not in a primitive tribe anymore. You do not need approval to exist. Yet when you subconsciously act as if you do, your body broadcasts instability. And people feel that. Especially younger women. The nervous system is wired for co-regulation. Studies in behavioral neuroscience show that one person's physiological state influences another's. If you are tense, their body tightens. If you are calm, their system softens. When you enter a space breathing slowly, shoulders relaxed, movements unhurried, you send a biological message. It's safe here. You've seen this in real life. Watch Keanu Reeves in interviews. He doesn't dominate the room. He doesn't rush. He listens fully, speaks slowly, no excess movement, no performance, and yet, attention naturally gravitates toward him. He once said, "Energy is contagious. Choose wisely." He chose stillness. When you notice yourself over-explaining, over-talking, over-moving, understand what's happening. You are trying to compensate for internal uncertainty. But uncertainty leaks. Stillness contains. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved and the raging of the sea falls still around it." The waves do not stop. The rock does not move. When you find yourself easily pulled into others' emotional states, that is a sign your nervous system is reactive. A man with presence does not absorb chaos. He remains regulated. And regulation creates gravity. Research from Harvard Business Review found that leaders who speak more slowly, pause intentionally, and hold silence are perceived as more competent and more powerful, even when the content of their message is identical to others. The difference is not information. It is composure. When you speak fast to prove value, you reduce perceived value. When you pause, you signal confidence. So what do? You train your physiology before you train your words. Breathe through your nose. Slow your exhale. Lengthen your pauses before responding. Lower your vocal pace. Reduce unnecessary gestures. When you walk into a room, do not scan for reactions. Choose a direction. Move deliberately. If you cannot sit alone for 5 minutes without reaching for your phone, you do not yet own your mind. And without ownership of your mind, presence cannot exist. Presence is self-possession. It is knowing you are enough without announcing it. It is remaining unchanged in noisy environments. When you stop chasing attention, attention recalibrates toward you. Presence is not a technique you switch on. It is who you become. When you stop performing and start inhabiting yourself completely. 2. Emotional independence. Emotional independence is strength that does not tremble. You notice you lack it when your mood shifts because someone hasn't replied. When a delayed text creates anxiety. When a small change in tone feels like rejection. That reaction tells you something simple. Your emotional center is not fully yours. Psychology describes this as external emotional regulation. When your internal state depends on someone else's behavior, you surrender power without realizing it. And people feel that surrender. Especially women. Human beings are wired to detect emotional instability. Research on attachment theory shows that anxious behavior, over-texting, seeking reassurance, hyper-focusing on signals, activates subtle withdrawal in others. It creates pressure. Pressure repels. Calm attracts. An emotionally independent man feels deeply, but he is not controlled by what he feels. He experiences disappointment without collapsing, attraction without obsession, connection without attachment. You've seen this dynamic before. Think of a high-level negotiator. In moments of tension, he doesn't rush to fill silence. He doesn't panic at resistance. He leans back, breath steady, expression neutral, because he knows urgency weakens position. The same principle applies in attraction. When you react quickly, you reveal dependence. When you respond slowly, you reveal control. Viktor Frankl, who survived unimaginable suffering, wrote, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response." That space is emotional independence. When you feel the impulse to react, and you pause, you reclaim authority over yourself. Notice the signs. If you check your phone repeatedly, if you replay conversations in your head, if you seek subtle validation through attention, understand what that means. You are negotiating your worth externally. And worth negotiated externally always fluctuates. Emotional independence begins when you decide your internal state is your responsibility. Neuroscience shows that repeated emotional reactivity strengthens neural pathways of anxiety. But the opposite is also true. When you consciously delay reaction, you train your nervous system to tolerate uncertainty. And uncertainty tolerance is power. Look at someone like Denzel Washington in interviews. He doesn't rush answers. He doesn't chase approval from the host. He speaks when he chooses, pauses when he chooses. His emotional state is not shaped by the room. That is not arrogance. That is self-governance. When you feel attraction, enjoy it, but do not let it define your identity. When you feel rejection, process it, but do not let it reduce your value. A man who needs reassurance transmits fragility. A man who chooses connection transmits stability. So what should you do? Delay emotional reactions. Even 5 seconds is enough. Resist the urge to double text. Let silence exist without interpreting it as threat. Build a life dense with purpose. So one person's attention does not determine your emotional climate. When your day is full of direction, you stop orbiting someone else's attention. Emotional independence does not mean coldness. It means self-regulation. It means your peace is not rented, it is owned. When your happiness is self-generated, your energy shifts. You stop chasing reassurance. You stop analyzing every signal. You stop shrinking when attention fluctuates. And in that steadiness, something changes. You are no longer trying to be chosen. You are choosing. And that difference is felt immediately. 3. Stop chasing approval. Approval seeking is silent self-abandonment. You notice it when you agree too quickly. When you laugh at jokes you don't find funny. When you adjust your opinion to avoid tension. When you text back instantly, not because you want to, but because you're afraid not to. That reaction tells you something uncomfortable. You are negotiating your identity for acceptance. Psychology calls this social conformity pressure. Human beings are wired to fit in. In early survival environments, rejection meant danger, so your brain still interprets disapproval as threat. But attraction does not reward conformity. It rewards stability. When you bend to be liked, you subtly signal that your position is flexible. And flexibility in character is often interpreted as weakness. Especially in romantic dynamics. Studies in social psychology show that people are more attracted to individuals who display self-consistency. When someone appears grounded in their values, even in disagreement, they are perceived as more confident and more desirable. Consistency creates trust. Over-accommodation creates doubt. You've seen this in real life. In interviews, Elon Musk has disagreed openly with hosts. Calmly, without hostility, he does not rush to soften every statement to preserve likability. He states his position, pauses, and lets it stand. Whether people agree or not, they respect the solidity. Because solidity is rare. When you feel the urge to explain yourself excessively, understand what's happening. You are trying to secure approval in advance. But preemptive approval seeking lowers perceived value. Naval Ravikant once said, "If you care about what other people think, you will always be their prisoner." Prisoners adjust behavior to avoid punishment. Free men do not. When you seek approval, you give control of your emotional state to external reactions. And once others sense that control, dynamics shift. Women, especially younger women, are highly perceptive to this. They may not consciously articulate it, but they feel when a man's confidence depends on their validation. And dependence creates pressure. Pressure reduces attraction. Notice the signals in yourself. If you hesitate to say what you truly think, if you feel tension when someone disagrees, if you rush to smooth over minor friction, that tension is fear of rejection. But controlled disagreement is not threat. It is strength. Research in behavioral economics shows that perceived scarcity increases value. The same applies to attention. When your agreement is automatic, it has no weight. When your approval is selective, it carries significance. So what do? Pause before agreeing. Speak your genuine view calmly, without raising your tone. Allow silence after your statement. Resist the impulse to feel discomfort. Let people react. Your job is not to be universally liked. Your job is to be internally aligned. When you stop trying to impress, your energy shifts from performance to presence. You stop reacting. You start choosing. You stop bending. You start standing. And something subtle happens. Mystery appears. Because when you are not chasing approval, people begin wondering where they stand with you. And curiosity increases attraction. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." In other words, release the need to be perceived perfectly. When you no longer fear temporary disapproval, you become stable. And stability commands respect. Approval is fleeting. Authenticity endures. The moment you stop chasing validation, your posture changes, your tone slows, your responses sharpen, your energy consolidates. You are no longer trying to secure position. You are occupying it. And that difference is impossible to fake. 4. Depth. Depth is gravity earned through experience. You notice its absence when conversations feel shallow. When you rely on charm instead of substance. When silence feels threatening because there is nothing solid underneath it. That signal tells you something important. You may have lived, but you have not integrated. Age alone does not create depth. Reflection does. Psychology calls this post-traumatic growth, the phenomenon where individuals who consciously process hardship develop stronger emotional resilience. Clarity and perspective. Pain does not automatically refine a man. Reflection does. Without reflection, experience becomes baggage. With reflection, it becomes gravity. Women, especially younger women, are instinctively drawn to gravity. Not loudness. Not flash. Not exaggerated energy. Gravity. Because gravity feels safe. You've seen the difference before. Two men speak about failure. One blames circumstances, other people, bad luck. The other speaks calmly, takes ownership, extracts the lesson, and moves forward. The second man feels heavier, more grounded, less reactive. That weight is depth. Jordan Peterson once said, "The purpose of life is finding the largest burden that you can bear and bearing it." A man who has carried weight, and not collapsed, radiates something different. When you see yourself avoiding difficult reflection, avoiding responsibility, or narrating your past to protect your ego, understand what that means. You are preserving image instead of building substance. And image fades. Substance remains. Neuroscience shows that emotional regulation improves when individuals repeatedly revisit painful memories with structured meaning-making. In simple terms, when you analyze your past honestly, your nervous system becomes less reactive in the future. Depth is regulated experience. It is the ability to sit with discomfort without rushing to escape it. Look at someone like Morgan Freeman. His presence on screen is not driven by speed or volume. It is driven by measured speech, controlled emotion, and the quiet authority of lived experience. He does not appear hurried. He appears anchored. Anchoring comes from having faced storms and learned their patterns. When you notice yourself exaggerating stories to appear more impressive, that is a sign you doubt the inherent weight of your real experiences. But reality, owned honestly, carries more power than performance. A man with depth does not overshare to impress. He shares selectively. He listens more than he speaks. He pauses before responding. Because he understands complexity. Depth allows you to tolerate ambiguity. To hear opinions without reacting. To disagree without hostility. Research in emotional intelligence shows that individuals who demonstrate cognitive complexity, the ability to hold multiple perspectives without losing internal stability, are perceived as more mature and more trustworthy. Trust precedes attraction. When you encounter adversity and immediately look for someone to blame, you remain shallow. When you encounter adversity and ask, "What is this teaching me?" you deepen. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That is depth in one sentence. Obstacles are not interruptions. They are refinement. So what do? Revisit your failures privately. Extract lessons without self-pity. Own your mistakes without dramatizing them. Read widely. Think deeply. Reflect deliberately. Stop trying to appear younger. Start becoming wiser. A man who accepts his scars without shame becomes stable. And stability attracts. Depth is not loud. It is felt in how you handle disagreement. In how you respond to pressure. In how you treat people when you gain power. When you stop performing youth and start embodying wisdom, something changes. Your words slow. Your movements simplify. Your reactions soften. You are no longer trying to compete with energy. You are operating from gravity. And gravity does not chase. It pulls. 5. Purpose. Purpose is direction under pressure. You notice its absence when you wake up without urgency. When your schedule bends around other people's attention. When your mood depends on how the day treats you. That tells you something direct. You are reacting to life, not directing it. A man without purpose drifts. And drifting feels light at first. But over time, it feels empty. Psychology is clear on this. Studies in motivational science show that individuals with clearly defined long-term goals demonstrate higher resilience, lower anxiety, and stronger emotional regulation. Purpose stabilizes identity. It reduces overreaction because your mind is anchored to something larger than the moment. When your life has direction, small disruptions lose power. Without direction, every disruption feels personal. You've seen this difference before. Two men experience rejection. One spirals, overthinks, questions his worth. The other processes it, and returns to his mission. The difference is not emotional numbness. It is orientation. The second man's self-worth is attached to his path, not to a person. That orientation creates gravity. Women sense this instinctively. A man who is building something meaningful does not orbit around attention. He invites others into his orbit. Look at someone like David Goggins. His energy is intense, but beneath it is something structured, a relentless alignment with his mission. He wakes up with intention. He trains with intention. He speaks with intention. As he said, "You are in danger of living a life so comfortable and soft that you will die without ever realizing your true potential." Purpose eliminates softness. Not emotionally, but structurally. When you notice yourself saying yes to things that dilute your focus, that is a sign your direction is unclear. When you rearrange priorities to avoid discomfort, that signals drift. Drift weakens presence. Purpose sharpens it. Neuroscience shows that when individuals pursue meaningful goals, dopamine regulation becomes healthier, motivation stabilizes, impulsivity decreases, the brain begins filtering distractions more efficiently. Purpose is neurological alignment. When you know where you are going, you waste less energy deciding what matters. And clarity reduces insecurity. Because insecurity often grows in empty space. A man with purpose does not need constant validation. His progress validates him. He does not panic over silence. He is occupied. He does not chase attention. He is building. You see this in entrepreneurs, elite athletes, disciplined creators. They may enjoy connection, but their emotional stability does not hinge on it. Their path precedes their relationships. Nietzsche wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Purpose is that why. Without it, inconvenience feels overwhelming. With it, inconvenience becomes friction, not failure. When you define what matters deeply to you, not what impresses others, not what trends suggest, but what genuinely aligns with your values, your energy consolidates. You become selective. Selective with time. Selective with attention. Selective with relationships. Scarcity increases value. When your availability decreases because your focus increases, your perceived value rises naturally. This is not manipulation. It is alignment. A man with purpose is not rushed. Not because he lacks ambition, but because he is already moving. He does not need to prove direction. He demonstrates it daily. When obstacles appear, he adjusts, but he does not abandon his path. Adaptability within structure is strength. Over time, purpose changes your posture. You stand straighter. You speak clearer. You hesitate less. Because indecision fades when direction is defined. You are no longer asking, "Do they approve of me?" You are asking, "Does this align with my path?" That shift transforms attraction. Presence draws attention. Emotional independence sustains it. Authenticity elevates it. Depth anchors it. But purpose unifies it. Without purpose, magnetism scatters. With purpose, it concentrates. And concentrated energy does not chase. It pulls. And what it pulls, respects. A man who masters himself never chases attention. He becomes the center of gravity others move toward. If you found this valuable, subscribe to Silent Stoic, so each day you become stronger and more composed. Which of these 5 traits do you need to strengthen first?